have you back with us on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. I guess I had no idea that we had so many experts on refugees and resettlement in this country as we do. The number of governors that is coming out in this country saying that they will not take Syrian or Iraqi refugees, I think is a bad mark on America. There's no question about it. And I also think they're showing their ignorance and they're trying to wash their hands of a problem. This is President Obama talking about fear.
We do not succumb to fear. That's the primary power that these terrorists have over us. They cannot strike a mortal blow against the United States or against France or against a country like Malaysia. The most powerful tool we have to fight ISIL is to say that we're not afraid, to not elevate them, to somehow buy into their fantasy that they're doing something important.
So if all of these governors are against bringing in any refugees from Syria or Iraq, are they afraid? Or do they just don't want the responsibility, or they just politically oppose the president? We have experience in this country, in this area, firsthand experience. This is a fabulous story. Congressman Seth Moulton, who is a Democrat from Massachusetts, has been in somewhat of a public battle back and forth with Governor Charlie Baker, who has said that he does not want Syrian refugees in his state. The congressman is calling this un-American and immoral. He speaks from experience. He's a United States Marine with 4 tours of duty in Iraq. He also has experience with an Iraqi translator who became a target, ended up coming to the United States, and was getting help from this Marine. Congressman Moulton, good to have you with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.
Good to be here, Ed. Thank you for having me.
I know that you didn't expect this story to unfold the way it did. I want your thoughts on the way this is played back and forth, and now the spotlight from unusual and unique experience on your part is starting to get traction and attention. Your thoughts on it?
Well, to be honest, I just spoke out for what I thought was the right policy. And I frankly wasn't even thinking about Mohammed when I first said that. I was thinking about our national security, thinking about the message that refusing to accept refugees sends to our enemies and to our friends abroad. And I was surprised by the response, including both the positive response from some corners, but also the incredibly vitriolic negative response. And one of the things people have been saying was, okay, Congressman, if you believe in this, why don't you accept the refugees? And that's when people realized that, in fact, I had taken in, my family took in my translator from Iraq when he needed refuge from insurgents and was seeking asylum here in America.
Congressman, tell us that story.
Well, to be honest, Mohammed came here on his own. I'd like to say that I helped him get here, but he was smart enough to earn a Fulbright scholarship to study in the United States with the full intention of returning back home. He had dreamed of being a professor in Baghdad at his old university. But he came here at a time when the civil war was reaching its peak in Iraq. And after he left, his family was persecuted for his role helping the American troops on the ground, for literally putting his life on the line, not just for his country, but for ours. So his family was visited by insurgents. They received death threats. They actually had to leave their home and change cities. And so Mohammed was here in America realizing that it would be a death sentence for him to go back to Iraq. And so he sought asylum. And when you seek asylum, you can't work. So for over the entire year plus that it took for his asylum application to be approved, he lived with my family home in Massachusetts.
Congressman Seth Moulton with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Did 4 tours of duty in Iraq, and once a Marine, always a Marine. He's got very unique experience and insight on all of this. The number has been reported, Congressman, that 2,300 refugees from Syria have come to the United States since 9/11. None of them have created a problem. None of them have been on any kind of terrorist watch list. What do you say to Charlie Baker, the governor of your state, Massachusetts, when that number comes up? And your thoughts on his position on this? He just doesn't want any refugees.
Well, he's moderated his position a bit since then, since we've had this discussion, and he refused to sign a Republican letter from other governors, formalizing their opposition to this. So I think that this debate is having some effect. But look, his initial reaction was that we should just shut down, taking refugees in, and that sends exactly the wrong message to the very people that ISIS is persecuting. I mean, these refugees are refugees because of ISIS. These are the people that ISIS is attacking. So America has always been a beacon of hope for people across the globe who are persecuted. And there are no more important people for that need to hear that message now than the very people that are the enemies of ISIS in Syria. ISIS is our enemy. ISIS is also the enemy of these Syrian refugees. And ISIS wins when they get us to change our values. ISIS wins when we stop taking in the very people that they are persecuting. We can't give any victory to ISIS, and I'm afraid that's what this policy of pausing or delaying the immigration of Syrian refugees does. Now, let me also add, our national security is critical, and if I felt that we had a very serious security risk with the vetting process, then I would be pushing for improving the vetting process. But right now, it takes 18 to 24 months with numerous background checks and personal interviews, investigations into every Syrian refugee who wants to come here before he or she is even allowed into the country. So it's a totally different process than in Europe. In Europe, the refugees are essentially just walking across the borders. Mm-hmm. In the United States, it takes 18 to 24 months before a Syrian refugee is allowed to set foot in this country, and it's only after the most highly scrutinized vetting process, screening process for any traveler coming to the U.S. I'm confident that process is as strong as can be. And I'll also add that the Republican bill doesn't do anything substantive to improve the screening. It hits pause, which sends exactly the wrong message, but it doesn't even accomplish anything other than adding a few layers of bureaucracy. It doesn't really improve the security of the process.
So given everything you just said, Congressman, do the Republicans have any merit in what they're saying, in their rhetoric? Is there any rhyme or reason, or is it simply based on fear and political posturing against this president?
Well, I think fundamentally it's based on fear. But their position is not unreasonable if you sort of look at this at the high level. I mean, we want to protect our national security.
Sure.
We've got to be safe. But when you get into it in any detail, when you recognize that this kind of bill is exactly what ISIS is trying to get us to do, to change our values, to not be the beacon of hope, to further the divide between Muslims and non-Muslims, both here at home and across the globe, then you realize that we're playing right into their hands. And I think it's also important to point out that ISIS is really using a different and new strategy compared to most traditional terrorist organizations. You know, Al-Qaeda, when they wanted to attack us on 9/11, they had the Saudis who they sent into America well in advance, and they had the sleeper cells, and they were training and everything else. ISIS does most of its recruitment over the Internet. ISIS is interested in inspiring fear and hatred and radicalizing folks right here at home. Mm-hmm. So, if they were even using refugee channels to send folks over to America, then this would be of greater concern. But that doesn't seem to be the strategy that they're using. If they have a choice between radicalizing someone already in America, someone like the Boston Marathon bombers who came here as children and were only radicalized as young adults, why would they choose to try to send someone through the strictest screening process for any traveler to the United States that takes almost 2 years when they could simply radicalize someone over the Internet right here at home?
Mm-hmm. Congressman, I have to ask you, with your military experience, are we using the right strategy? Leon Panetta has come out and criticized it, says we need more activity in the game. Dianne Feinstein says that we don't have years to do this. Your thoughts? Are we doing the right thing strategically with the backdrop of the French, the Russians, and now the Brits talking about being militarily involved in all of this? Your thoughts? Where are we?
The short answer is we need to do a lot more. The short answer is that I think we've had a very short-term military-focused strategy that's been very much about just dropping some bombs and trying to kill some ISIS fighters without any long-term political or diplomatic vision for where this is going. And as someone who's fought on the ground in Iraq before, we can't send troops into combat without a clear mission. And we're not going to defeat ISIS without a clear plan for the political aftermath. You know, after all, ISIS didn't sweep in from Syria and take over large swaths of Iraq just by defeating the Iraqi army. The Iraqi army put their weapons down and went home because they lost faith in their government. That tells us that the fundamental problem in Iraq and Syria today is a failure of politics. And you don't fix Iraqi politics just by training Iraqi troops.
Interesting. Congressman Seth Moulton, great to have you with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. I appreciate your time. Keep up the fight, my friend. Thank you.
Ed, thank you. Take care.
You bet. The voice of a decorated veteran here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Very few of them in the United States Congress. Congressman Seth Moulton speaking his piece here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary.